Your ideas don't cost anything these days if there is no data behind them proving they might work. We constantly hear, show me your data, or we are making data-driven decisions, and yes, but data shows that past experiments in this area were not successful, so we won't go in this direction. Company managers are obsessed with data these days. It looks like data is their god or whatever deity. They pray for data. They are ready to sacrifice ideas for data, and without data, they are not ready to take any further actions. And it kind of looks rational. In our culture, it is only natural to believe numbers and proven facts. We see the number, we believe that something has been calculated, tested, verified, and it's the only thing that can be trusted. And I'm genuinely tired of this because radical innovations, those that change the world, make our lives better, and yes, that bring companies to the new levels, cannot prove that they can succeed. They cannot provide this data. They are too new. There is no data for them. Their success rates are far from being clear. They often go against all existing patterns. That is why they're often neglected. These ideas are omitted at the earliest stages of the decision-making process in companies. Hi, my name is Lisa and I talk about innovation on this channel. I'm reading this book now, A Culture of Growth, The Origins of the Modern Economy by the Nobel Prize laureate Joel Mokyr. And Mokyr proposes a theory that centuries ago Francis Bacon made a cultural revolution in science. Following his ideas, experiments and data became the cornerstone of the scientific method, which at the end played quite a huge role in the development of the Industrial Revolution and subsequently the sustained economic growth we enjoy today. So the scientific method based on observation, hypothesis testing, rigorousness, experimental validation was accepted by scientists and proved its worthiness via a great number of inventions over the centuries. That is why it became a part of our culture, and we use the scientific method anywhere we can, including business and business decisions. When we see data, when we see information based on this data, we feel that we can trust it. Something has been observed. It must show the objective reality. When there is no data behind something, we feel uncomfortable. We don't know if it's true or not. It presents a risk for us. But I want to talk about some fundamental constraints with data. What we're often missing when we talk about using data-driven approaches, hoping to be rational and objective. And first of all, data is supposed to be a representation of reality. But it's not supposed to be reality, and it is not reality. Often data presents a very limited representation because we haven't even reached the stage where we can see and gather all these notions, all the connections between things that surround us. Then Jeffrey Boker says, raw data is both an oxymoron and a bad idea. To the contrary, data should be cooked with care. And data is selected, and you or another person or a group of people choose what you measure. You choose what metrics to focus on. And there's always something that you omit, from objective conditions that you think are not that important to something that has never existed because there were no right conditions for it to exist. That is how data is never raw. And even if it could be raw, we wouldn't even want it to be, as we want data to be informative. We have to select our data because otherwise it wouldn't be useful. It would be just random numbers that don't say much. And of course, data needs to be documented carefully with intention to make it usable. Another constraint is that data is also captured by a scheme fixed in the past. So we use methods from the past. But in science, for example, progress depends a lot on progress in equipment and these methods that allows us to not only produce but measure something that was not possible to measure in the past. So tomorrow we might come up with novel methods, novel technologies that would change the way that we gather data, or what data needs to be gathered, what we can achieve in this space. And it may open completely novel dimensions in data that were not achievable before. Another constraint connected to data is that pure data rarely means anything. Data is later used to become information when you add context to it. And context matters a lot. If we say the temperature outside is 15 degrees Celsius above zero, it means not that much. Different contexts would change our perception of this data. It can be 15 degrees on the Baltic Sea side in July with the wind over 20 kilometers per hour, and we would understand that this is a cold but pretty much typical summer day in Gdansk. If it's 15 degrees in Warsaw in December, we would be quite surprised that it is so warm in winter. Same data, different context, everything is different. And the last constraint that I want to mention is that data requires interpretation. And we, as humans, interpret it. And whether we use some common definitions to do that, or we come up with our own hypothesis to describe what these numbers on the screen represent, the meaning of data lies outside of data. And it is a subject of change. You give the same numbers to different people and they will make different conclusions based on it, also depending on their experiences, knowledge, cultural background, and many other things. What I'm trying to say with all those points is that the concept of data is still very much constrained by design, not even to mention the fact that we as humans are biased and easily draw wrong conclusions. And when we say that we make decisions based on data, data itself isn't the main hero here. We add our interpretation to this data, the way we understand it, what we believe this data means. So it's all upon us, our imperfect understanding of things. We sort of create this illusion of being rational and objective when we are not. So what it means for business is that even by using data-driven approaches when we make decisions, we can never fully eliminate risks. The next point with data when it comes to innovation management is the fact that it represents the past, as I have mentioned, and sometimes that's kind of enough to make some progress, but it is definitely not enough to make progress in something completely novel, like radical innovation, because novelty implies a lack of data. Otherwise, it wouldn't be novel. In general, every innovation we come up with is based on knowledge and information from the past. In that sense, data can be seen as a foundation for what we plan to build. However, what you can and will build is not defined by that foundation, though of course it depends on it to a certain extent. Even in science, where data and experimentation is everything, you need to add your thoughts and ideas to make progress, to move in the direction to discover something new, to move beyond what already exists. In business, where it is even more difficult to measure and predict anything, the importance of the irrational, of your thoughts, your hunches, is even higher, whether we want to believe it or not. So what is my problem with data based on all these problems that I have mentioned? My problem is that lots of innovation decisions in companies are justified by the data we have or could gather in the near future, meaning that radical innovation projects have less chances to get through the decision gates, less chances to be approved by management, simply because they either lack data or need more time to gain necessary data to prove their value for the company. And this data focus often comes from the place where managers want to optimize their investments and outcomes from innovation. They want to pay less to get more. And this is the problem. They cannot calculate real outcomes of radical innovation projects and investments in them. It is an unknown variable, though of course radical innovation is usually about a high risk, high reward scenario. There is a classic article written for Harvard Business Review by Christensen, Kaufman, and Schick, and it is called Innovation Killers: How Financial Tools Destroy Your Capacity to Do New Things, where the authors talk about how managers misapply certain financial methods to predict outcomes from innovation. So usually managers, when they use these tools, they compare innovation investments against a baseline where they do nothing. They believe that if they do nothing and they do not invest in an innovation project, the company will remain in its current good health. But the truth is, if you do nothing, if you choose safer bets of not investing into innovation, your company's health is going to decline. And even when the question of the importance of radical innovation, because it is really important for companies to do such projects. So when this question is raised, business experts suggest using a lean approach based on data for radical innovations. But I have already explained in one of my videos that the lean startup method does not work for radical innovations, even in startups. So either way, we lose our ability to produce major novel products when we fully rely on data. And here, in general, larger businesses tend to focus more on incremental innovation, smaller changes, smaller improvements. It is believed that incremental innovations are safer for companies and radical projects are too risky. The process of making innovation decisions itself is built to allow incremental innovation that can show numbers and clear projections early in the process get through the decision-making machine in companies, while ambitious and risky radical innovation gets buried. Innovation decisions that might seem safe are not really that safe in general. Kleinschmidt and Cooper, in their publication The Impact of Product Innovativeness on Performance, show that the relationship between product innovativeness and commercial success is U-shaped, meaning that both high and low innovativeness products are more likely to succeed than those in between. So that means that if you are going for the middle ground, there are more chances for your project to fail, though managers who choose these projects might believe that they are managing risk and do a rational thing, when it's not the case. So basically, companies omit radical innovation projects because they cannot produce early, measurable signs of potential success. Well, it takes time for radical innovations, but we cannot even say that these radical innovations are riskier than incremental ones. It's just that such radical projects, solutions cannot prove early enough that they can be beneficial for the business. Here, of course, I have to mention that the data Kleinschmidt and Cooper use is based on radical projects that made it through the decision-making gate for whatever reason. But here comes the main point of the whole video. We will never know how much success could have been generated by those projects that were filtered out. And it is something that is impossible to measure because these projects never took off. It's just impossible to predict whether they could have been successful or not. This is really a central point. We cannot get data to justify our data-driven decisions. We cannot prove it. We cannot prove that those projects were about to fail. But to be fair here, we often talk about the Kodak case when the company decided not to go for the radical innovation, the digital cameras, and became bankrupt. But the truth is, we don't know whether they would have become the market leaders if they were to pursue that market. So it kind of works both ways. It is just a loop that we cannot break. Radical innovation projects are not chosen by decision makers because they cannot provide enough data to prove their validity early enough. So we cannot get data on how they would have performed. And here, I just really think that we need to accept that business and innovation is still a lot about luck and being at the right place at the right time, even if we call it luck simply because of lack of data to predict the outcome. And in this video, I'm not trying to make a point that data is redundant in the innovation process, because it is not. I'm claiming that decisions about innovation projects should not always choose data-driven models as primary ones. Some projects deserve to go outside of the traditional decision-making practices. Businesses should leave some space for absolutely irrational experiments based on unconventional ideas, based on some hunches and intuition, but allow these projects to happen, especially if they fit long-term company strategies. And I really hope that company managers, decision makers will soon relearn to embrace risk and embrace uncertainty. This is the way to innovate, and this is the only way for us to grow further, both for businesses and society in general. I would be happy to see your thoughts, what you think about this topic. Feel free to share your ideas in the comment section below. And I hope to see you next time with the next video. Have a good one. Bye!